Usually when we talk about a fairy tale romance, there's this deeply ingrained cultural expectation of purity.
Right, like it's inherently a healing light.
Yes, exactly. You find your true love, the curse is broken, and suddenly the dying kingdom is just bursting into springtime bloom.
It's clean.
It's fundamentally restorative.
Yes.
But the excerpts we have stacked up for you today completely obliterate that expectation.
They really do. We are taking a deep dive into Ava Reid's dark fantasy novel, Innamorata, which is book 1 of the House of Teeth duology. And let me tell you, the romantic landscape we're looking at here is not a cure.
No, not at all. It is a devastating visceral contagion. It truly is the absolute definition of a destructive force of nature.
Yeah, and what Reid does so brilliantly is take our modern, deeply sanitized desire for love to be this triumphant positive force.
This idea that passion is the ultimate savior of the world.
Exactly. She takes that and turns it completely inside out. And that's our mission for you today. We are not here to just walk you through a bait-and-bop summary, because you already know the basic architecture of a romantic tragedy.
Right. We are going to bypass the surface and tunnel straight into the core of this world. We're unpacking a visceral study of how love, political power, and biological duty all just violently collide.
It asks such a dangerous, provocative question. What happens when true love doesn't heal the people around you, but actually functions as a radioactive isotope that just ruins everyone in its blast radius?
It's a terrifying thought. And to really grapple with that question, you have to understand the specific geopolitical and physical reality this story is built upon.
Yeah, the setting isn't just a backdrop here. It is the foundational logic of the tragedy.
Yeah.
We are situated on the island of Drapain.
Specifically inside the claustrophobic stone walls of Castle Crudel. And this is definitely not a kingdom of glass slippers.
No, this is a grotesque, morbid island governed by the Septinsular Covenant.
Which we really need to talk about, because
Yes.
that covenant dictates the entire psychological reality of these characters. It's this ruling body of 7 interconnected islands or houses.
But their authority isn't based on divine right or some enlightened philosophy.
Far from it. Their history is literally written in and sustained by extreme violence and bodily desecration. The text notes that before there were kings or dukes here, only death lay upon the marshes and the sickly white beaches.
Precisely. Castle Crudel didn't just rise from the earth organically. The great monument of the castle flowered up, stone upon cruel stone, only after massive amounts of blood watered the earth.
It is built on the legacy of incredibly brutal historical figures. People with names like Nicephorus the Sluggard, Widsith the Precious, and Berengar who fights alone.
Berengar who fights alone.
I mean, you can feel the sheer suffocating weight of history pressing down on the inhabitants just from that name. It's not just a castle. It's an active Gothic charnel house.
And that kind of environment demands a rigid adherence to archaic customs. The people of Drapain are trapped in this constant cycle of ancestral reverence that is deeply tied to the physical body.
Right, because in Drapain, the body isn't a temple for the soul. It is raw material.
It is a biological resource.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this brings us to the most shockingly graphic opening sequence imaginable. Reid doesn't ease us in at all.
No, we don't start with a stolen glance in a courtyard.
We start with the desecration of the matriarch, Adele Blanche, who holds the title of the Mistress of Teeth. And, I mean, that title alone tells you everything you need to know about this family's relationship with consumption and remnants.
It is a stomach-churning baseline to establish. The author places us immediately into the fundamental reality of this world. Even in death, the highest nobility are afforded zero dignity.
Yeah, magic and ritual here are not ethereal. They don't involve chanting into the wind or waving wands.
Magic in Drapain is rooted in messy, visceral biology. We witness 14 leeches, which is their term for doctors and physicers, completely dismantling the matriarch.
And these leeches are furnished by the great houses of the Septinsular Covenant. The visual details in this excerpt are just burned into my brain.
The sepia robes.
Yes. The leeches are wearing these sepia-colored robes, specifically described as the shade of tea cloths, heavily stained with tea. It's such a mundane, dirty detail.
And they are gathered around Adele Blanche's naked body. It rained the night before, so she isn't on a pristine marble slab.
She's just lying in the mud. The mud is literally pooling in the hollow place between the two halves of her rib cage, which are thrusting upward like a crested white bird.
Her body is completely stripped of all nobility, reduced to loose, wrinkled flesh.
And notice the spatial dynamics of the scene, too. The attendants, the noble guests who have ostensibly come to mourn, they are forced to stand at a distance on elevated marble pews.
Right, they are pushed to the periphery just to give the leeches room to work. The spiritual aspect of death is entirely secondary to the mechanical, biological aspect.
Which is wild. The most esteemed surgeon, this man with a jagged birthmark on the back of his skull shaped like a leaping fish, totters up to the body. But he doesn't deliver a eulogy.
No, he delivers an active curse.
It's a literal anti-prayer. He says to the corpse, "May you be consumed as a coal upon the hearth. May you dry up as water in a pail. May you become so small that you become nothing."
They aren't wishing her soul peace at all. They are actively commanding her physical erasure from the world.
Because in a society built on the remnants of ancestors, a powerful ancestor is a huge threat. They need to unmake her.
And the physical desecration that follows is intensely industrial. They use a translucent pig viscera tube to drain her pulpy blood into a fluted vessel.
I have to pause on that pig viscera tube. It's such a specific, grotesque choice of technology.
It really is.
The tube keeps clogging with her pulpy blood, and the leeches just flick it with a finger, the way you'd shoo away a horsefly. It is so utterly devoid of respect.
But wait, if they are actively trying to unmake her and erase her power, how did that square with Adele Blanche's actual dying wish?
Exactly. Because she didn't just die passively. She died with a massive, treasonous design already in motion.
And that is the central tension of the opening. The ruling class is trying to erase her, but Adele Blanche has weaponized her own lineage to ensure a resurrection.
Her dying decree was for her granddaughter, the heiress Marozia, to marry Prince Liuprand.
On the surface, it looks like a standard political alliance, but the underlying mechanics of this world's magic mean it's actually a biological trap.
So walk me through those mechanics. How does marrying off your granddaughter trigger a resurrection?
Well, it comes down to the concept of biological resonance and energetic contrast. Adele Blanche's necrotic flesh is scattered and powerless on its own.
Right.
She needs an external power source to act as a battery for her reassembly. And Prince Liuprand's bloodline originates from Seraph, a place associated with extreme vitality, light, and life.
So by forcing Marozia to marry Liuprand, Adele Blanche is structurally introducing a high-energy biological conductor into the stagnant bloodline of the House of Teeth.
Exactly. It's a literal blood ritual masquerading as a wedding.
Wow. So she wants the royal bloodline of Seraph to mix with the House of Teeth so that her other granddaughter, Agnes, can use that combined vital energy to channel the stolen resurrection ritual.
Yes, and pull the matriarch back from the void. Adele Blanche wants to bring the entire island back under the absolute, terrifying rule of death.
It's just so insidious. The environment of Dropan is defined entirely by the aesthetics of decay. Old blood, mud, translucent viscera, cold stone.
And into this absolute, perfectly balanced abyss of morbidity steps Prince Liuprand.
Liuprand the Golden. The aesthetic whiplash the text gives us here is incredible.
His very presence is described as an emanation.
Yeah. He arrives wearing a doublet of white, braided with gold, gilded epaulets, a white cape, standing against the damp sepia-toned darkness of Castle Crudel. He looks like a winking star.
He is a sheer intrusion of light into an ecosystem that has spent centuries evolving to thrive in the dark. The text explicitly states that before Liuprand arrives, the castle is steeped in a kind of eternal winter.
But his golden aura, his literal physical warmth, begins to thaw the coldness of the stones.
He is gentle, he is flawlessly courteous, and he possesses a beauty that the narrative claims could break 1,000 hearts down their center.
You know, it makes me think of an analogy. Imagine Castle Crudel as this deep, subterranean Gothic cavern.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The creatures who live there have perfectly adapted to the absolute dark. They have no eyes, they navigate by echolocation, they survive by eating damp moss. It's a grim existence, but it is a functioning ecosystem.
Right, it works for them.
Exactly. Then suddenly you drop a literal blazing sunbeam straight into the center of the cavern.
It shatters the equilibrium.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yes, it lights the place up, but it doesn't just provide comforting warmth. It violently exposes all the rot that was safely hidden in the shadows.
It blinds the creatures who don't have the optical hardware to process that much light.
Exactly, and it casts terrifying, stark-new shadows against the cavern walls. A sunbeam in a charnel house isn't a blessing. It's an agonizing, highly disruptive force.
That is a phenomenal conceptual framework for this story, because as we see immediately, a sunbeam doesn't warm everyone equally.
Some things it warms and other things it scorches.
And Liuprand's light doesn't just illuminate the physical castle, it acts as a harsh spotlight that deepens the existing psychological shadows of the people living there.
Which brings us directly to the tragic central dynamic between the two cousins who receive this blinding light in profoundly different ways. Let's dissect Marozia and Agnes, because this is where Reid takes a sledgehammer to the classic maiden trope.
In a standard fantasy narrative, we all know the setup. You have the beautiful, entitled princess and the wicked stepsister.
Or you have the overlooked, mousy girl who is secretly the chosen one with a heart of gold. But here, the moral and psychological architecture is vastly more complicated.
We start with Marozia, the heiress of the House of Teeth. She is beautiful, she is intensely passionate, and she is heavily embodied.
She is the one wearing the grand, sweeping crimson velvet dresses and the heavy, opulent gold jewelry.
Right. She is the golden child, the one chosen by the dead grandmother to marry the prince, to carry the political weight of the house, and to be the biological vessel for this grand resurrection scheme.
She is taking up space. She is loud, vital, and present. And then we have Agnes.
The text literally refers to her repeatedly as the statue girl.
She is silent.
Yeah.
She is chronically overlooked. She wears drab gray. While Marozia is out being charming and fulfilling her grand political destiny, Agnes is in the background doing things like endlessly sorting rice and amber beads.
Just letting the beads roll in an endless, meaningless gyre, she is performing the ultimate act of self-erasure.
But see, this is where I really struggle with Agnes, and I have to push back on the way she's framed early on.
How so?
Well, there's a scene later in the excerpts where Marozia is going through the horrific mangling process of childbirth. She is in unimaginable agony.
It's a brutal scene.
It really is. And Agnes just kneels there on the floor, letting Marozia literally mangle and crush her hand in pain, and Agnes doesn't even flinch. She doesn't comfort her, she just takes the physical damage like an object.
She becomes completely inert.
Yeah. I found myself wanting to yell at the text. Is Agnes really just a passive victim here? Because sorting beads and acting like a literal stone while your cousin is screaming in agony feels less like innocence and more like an incredibly cold form of complicity.
It's a completely valid reaction, and the text wants you to feel that frustration.
Yeah.
But we have to analyze Agnes's behavior not through the lens of modern empathy, but through the specific survival mechanics of the Septensular Covenant.
Okay, fair enough.
In Gerpain, Agnes's silence is not passivity. It is highly strategic, heavily forged armor. You have to remember the history of this place.
The draining of the matriarchs.
Exactly. In a kingdom where power is maintained by draining the pulpy blood of matriarchs and cursing them to nothingness, what happens to women who speak out of turn? What happens to people who show vibrancy and desire?
They become targets. I hear that. If you shine too brightly, you get harvested.
Exactly. Making yourself a statue is a calculated survival mechanism. She observes everything. There's a brilliant passage where she watches the stone gargoyles on the castle walls and notes that they would sooner fall apart than learn to fly.
Wow. That is her internal manifesto.
It is. She knows that attempting to fly, attempting to possess agency or passion in Castle Crudal will cause you to shatter. We know she has a vibrant inner life because she writes stories.
But when she showed them to her grandmother, Adele Blanche coldly critiqued and dismissed them.
So Agnes learned to compress her entire existence into tiny, undetectable movements. She isn't devoid of empathy during Marozia's childbirth. She's executing the only protocol she knows: endure and survive without leaving a psychic footprint.
She is the ultimate chameleon, hiding in plain sight by pretending to be part of the architecture. But then the sunbeam arrives.
And Liuprand ruins her perfect camouflage because, unlike everyone else in her entire life, he actually looks at her.
And he doesn't just look at her. He perceives the life beneath the stone.
What's fascinating here is that Liuprand, despite being betrothed and eventually married to Marozia, is inherently drawn to the shadows. He is a creature of light, but he seeks refuge in the library.
Hiding his pleasures among the pages of arcane books. And it's in that library, a space described as still and quiet and gold as the inside of a vault, that Liuprand and Agnes truly lock onto each other.
That library scene is so highly charged, the air feels thick just reading it.
Agnes is sitting there, trying to maintain her statue protocol, and Liuprand walks in. He doesn't just see a silent girl in gray, he notices what she reads. He pays attention to what she writes.
There's this devastating realization Agnes has, where the text says, always, she realized, he had seen her, when no one else bothered even to look.
That moment of true recognition is the catalyst that breaks her. When Liuprand's warmth touches her, both literally when they interact and metaphorically through his attention, it shatters that eternal winter she has carefully maintained.
Agnes suddenly realizes that she isn't actually a gargoyle. She is not devoid of desire. She desperately wants him.
But what makes her character so fascinating is that even in her awakening, she refuses to be a secondary character. She tells him, "I would have you be my equal, my matched half,"
She doesn't want to be his hidden disciple or his tragic secret.
which is such a massive shift from the girl sorting rice. She realizes her own terrifying capacity for passion, and she knows exactly what that passion will cost her in this specific ecosystem.
She literally looks at him and says, "You are my ruination."
Because by awakening her desire, he strips away her armor. He makes her visible, and therefore he makes her vulnerable.
And this awakening doesn't just ruin her carefully constructed safety, it turns her into the most disruptive force in the entire castle.
Because, as we learn very quickly, in the world Ava Reid has built, love does not politely follow the laws of marriage or the dictates of the state. It operates as its own tyrannical, inescapable master.
To fully grasp the sheer destructive magnitude of this love, we have to examine the cultural and biological context the author provides regarding romance in Liuprand's homeland.
Right, Turf.
The text introduces a concept from the city of Seraph. There is a literal codified pamphlet commissioned by the Dogaressa of Seraph that outlines the rigid rules of love.
And it is vital to understand that these aren't just poetic suggestions or romantic ideals. In Seraph, these rules are adhered to as strictly as the laws of physics.
Or the laws prohibiting theft and murder.
I have the excerpt of the rules right here, and they read like symptoms of a disease. Listen to this list. Marriage is no excuse for not loving. No one can be bound by two loves.
Every lover turns pale in the presence of his beloved.
He who is vexed by thoughts of his love eats little and seldom sleeps. Love can deny nothing to love.
Notice the language there. It completely weaponizes the concept of romance. It strips away agency. These rules frame love not as a conscious choice you make every day, but as an uncontrollable physiological affliction.
It's sympathetic biological resonance.
Exactly. If you truly love someone, your biology is hijacked, you must turn pale, you physically cannot eat. And most importantly, you cannot be bound by two loves. The soul's orientation forcibly alters the body's chemistry.
So this isn't just cultural conditioning where Liuprand feels guilty about having a mistress. This is a literal magic system.
It is.
Because Liuprand loves Agnes, he is physically, biologically, and legally incapable under the magical laws of Seraph of loving his actual lawful wife, Marozia.
He is a good man by the absolutist standards of Seraph. He is pure in his singular devotion to Agnes. And because of that pure integrity, he cannot even muster the ability to fake affection for Marozia.
His absolute goodness becomes her absolute torture. So what does this all mean? The tragedy of Marozia is arguably the most compelling, agonizing part of this entire deep dive.
Think about her position. She did everything she was supposed to do. She was the golden child.
She was beautiful. She was charming. She dutifully married the Golden Prince to secure her family's political future and fulfill her grandmother's dying wish.
But because the prince's soul is magically tethered to the statue girl in the library, Marozia is left agonizingly isolated in her own marriage bed.
She is forced to endure a completely hollow union, tasked with the biological duty of producing an heir with a man who literally, physically shudders at her touch.
And Reid doesn't spare us the gruesome details of what that kind of profound, unrequited dynamic does to a person's biology in this world.
No, she doesn't.
Marozia becomes pregnant with Liuprand's child, a girl named Mariope. But this is not a joyous event. Because the child is a product of duty devoid of love, the pregnancy operates like a hostile parasitic infection.
Marozia's body begins to completely fail under the strain of this unloved gestation. The descriptions are pure body horror.
Her skin is stretched terrifyingly taut over her frame.
Her blue veins show in this stark throbbing nexus, and across them are these garish red streaks that the text describes as looking like the claw marks of a mountain cat.
Her flesh grows dimpled and deeply furrowed. It's as if the child is aggressively mining her body for resources while offering nothing in return.
It is explicitly framed as parasitism. The mechanics of the magic system dictate that a fetus requires both physical nutrients and the spiritual essence of the parents to thrive safely.
But because Liuprand's spiritual essence, his soul, is tethered to Agnes, the magical umbilicus between father, mother, and child is severed.
The baby is drawing massive amounts of physical nutrients to survive. but it is rejecting Marozia's spiritual essence. An observer literally describes the child writhing like a worm inside the unwilling flesh of a lovely red apple.
That apple metaphor is perfectly devastating. Marozia is the apple, gorgeous and vibrant on the outside, the prized fruit of the House of Teeth.
But she is rotting from the inside out because she has been forced to carry the biological seed of a man who categorically loves someone else.
Her lifeblood is being violently siphoned. The sheer terrifying weight of Liuprand's unrequited love is literally tearing her cellular structure apart.
Which forces us to confront a horrifying paradox. Liuprand's purity, his absolute refusal to be a hypocrite, is the exact weapon that is destroying his wife.
If he were just a slightly worse man, if he were capable of lying, if he could just pretend to love Marozia a little bit, to ease the spiritual burden of the pregnancy, she might not be suffering so profoundly.
But his romantic honesty is lethal. This is where the world-building of Innamorata brilliantly expands its scope.
Marozia's agonizing isolation doesn't happen in a vacuum. Her suffering doesn't just destroy her internally, it creates a massive emotional vacuum around her.
And nature abhors a vacuum. The devastation of this central love triangle, Agnes, Liuprand, and Marozia, bleeds out. It seeps into the mortar of the castle and infects people who shouldn't even be involved in the politics of the royal bedchamber.
We see this contagion spread through two incredibly vivid secondary characters, Ninian and Pliny.
Let's examine Ninian's trajectory because her perspective is vital for understanding how the contagion of love ignores class and station.
Ninian is Marozia's handmaiden. She is a peasant girl with mismatched eyes, brought up from the absolute lowest, mud-soaked rungs of the castle hierarchy.
In this society, she's supposed to be less than invisible. She's supposed to be an object. But instead, she is consumed by a torrid, deeply obsessive devotion to her mistress.
Ninian looks at Marozia and sees a flawless marble deity. And conversely, she looks at Liuprand and sees only a pestilence.
Ninian completely understands the parasitic nature of the pregnancy. She looks at Marozia's swollen belly and thinks of the baby not as a royal heir, but as a machine, a device made solely for her mistress's torture.
She harbors these incredibly violent daydreams about taking a scalpel and literally cutting the child out of Marozia just to save her.
It's a profound manifestation of class consciousness colliding with obsessive love. Ninian has no political power to save Marozia, so she resorts to guerrilla tactics in the shadows.
She engages in a secret magical rebellion.
And the mechanics of this rebellion are wild. There is this incredibly visceral scene where Ninian hides in a dark corridor and unstoppers a vial of a highly volatile magic potion.
But because magic in Drapain requires equivalent exchange pain for power, she can't just sprinkle it on Marozia's pillow.
No. Ninian pours the scalding tonic directly onto her own fingers. It burns her. Then she smears the burning liquid onto her own lips.
She turns her own body into a suffering conduit just to deliver an enchanted kiss to Marozia every night when she tucks her into bed.
It's an astonishing violation of boundaries, fueled entirely by what Ninian perceives as pure protective love.
Marozia just thinks she ate something foul before bed, completely unaware of the dark craft and desperate perfidy happening mere inches from her face.
Ninian is willingly destroying her own flesh to impart some microscopic sliver of magical comfort to a woman who barely registers her as human. It proves that passion in Castle Crudale makes people do mad, self-destructive things.
And it's not just the passionate, desperate peasants who get infected by this contagion. Look at what happens to Pliny.
Oh, Pliny is fascinating. Pliny's a leech, one of the doctors. The text explicitly tells us that his defining characteristic, his greatest source of pride, is his absolute punctuality.
He is a man of rigid science, of order, of strict, unyielding routine. He is actually the one who first notices Agnes in the castle because he respects that she is never a single second late.
He appreciates her sensible, clockwork nature.
Right. Pliny represents the antithesis of romance. He is reason, duty, and the laws of the Septinsular Covenant made flesh.
But then, the unthinkable happens. He accidentally discovers the illicit affair between Agnes and Liuprand.
According to the strict laws of the island, his duty is clear. He must report them immediately. It is high treason. It threatens the entire biological resurrection plot.
But he doesn't say a word. Why? Because he is utterly, fundamentally converted by witnessing the sheer reality of their love.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the overwhelming power of the aesthetic of love. Pliny watches Agnes transform from a stone gargoyle into a vibrant, terrified, beautiful woman.
He witnesses the absolute pure devotion in Liuprand's eyes.
And the text describes his internal shift perfectly. It says his devotion slid into place like a wheel finding its groove.
That is such a mechanistic metaphor for a romantic awakening.
Exactly, because it appeals to his scientific mind. He realizes that the love between Agnes and Liuprand is the only true, mathematically perfect thing in a castle built on rot and lies.
He realizes that he loves Agnes, not in a possessive romantic way, but as a devoted acolyte to the phenomenon of her passion. He forsakes his solemn vows as a leech to protect their secret. He becomes their guard dog.
He goes so far as to secretly officiate their hidden wedding in the chapel.
I love that detail. He literally stands there in the dark, providing the candles, fastidiously making sure the wax doesn't drip and give them away.
This man of logic, this pillar of punctuality, is reduced to a willing conspirator. The love between Liuprand and Agnes is so potent, so undeniably real, that it completely overwrites his entire moral code.
He actively chooses the contagious laws of love over the sovereign laws of the state.
But all of these hidden obsessions, Agnes and Liuprand whispering in the chapel, Ninian scalding her lips with potions in the corridors, Pliny standing guard by the heavy wooden doors, it turns Castle Crudel into a massive, pressurized powder keg.
Everyone is living a double life.
Oh.
Everyone is holding their breath. And structurally, that level of tension is unsustainable. Someone has to light the match.
And that someone is the girl who used to sort the rice. Agnes decides she can no longer just exist as a shadow in the vault.
Which brings us to the absolute climax of the excerpts we have, the mask. Agnes orchestrates a breathtaking public declaration of her private treason.
The mask sequence is where Ava Reid elevates the narrative into a profound discussion on art as unspeakable truth. Historically, court masks were grand, allegorical plays designed to flatter the nobility and reinforce the status quo.
But Agnes weaponizes the format. She writes a play designed to reflect the grand spectacle of life, and while she casts minor actors from the outer wall for the ensemble, she casts herself and Liuprand in the two lead roles.
The aesthetics of this scene are a masterpiece of visual contrast. After spending the entire first half of the book in drab, invisible gray, Agnes steps onto the stage.
She is wearing a gown of spun silver, cut incredibly low to bare her collarbones, a stark rejection of her previous modesty.
Woven through the silk are real pearls and diamonds, embroidered with glimmering thread that catches every flicker of the candlelight.
But the most stunning piece of her costume is a pair of massive gossamer wings unfolding from her back. She looks like a celestial being that has just touched down in hell.
And while Agnes is on stage, completely bathed in literal and metaphorical light, we are constantly reminded of where Marozia is.
Marozia is in the audience, sitting in the dark. The spatial contrast is sharp and deeply intentional.
Marozia is wearing a heavy, long, diaphanous veil, attended by Ninian, who is carefully holding the fabric like a devoted spider tending a web.
Marozia is the lawful wife, the heiress, the golden child. Yet she is relegated to the passive role of a spectator, forced to sit in the gloom and watch her husband perform with the cousin she thought was just a piece of the furniture.
But the performance isn't just a play. Agnes introduces a practical effect that changes everything.
She releases hundreds of live moths into the great hall. To the audience, to the oblivious nobles, the lords, and the ladies of the covenant, it's just a stunning, expensive visual effect.
It's a tapestry of moths fluttering over their heads, adding atmosphere to the mask.
But in Liuprand, it is a direct, highly complex, coded message.
The text refers to this as the language of rustling wings. Because Liuprand and Agnes spent all those hours in the library studying arcane texts, he knows the entomological symbolism she is using.
He reads the specific features of the moths she chose to release. He notes the black wings, the white wings, the sudden flashes of iridescence in the candlelight.
He translates their chaotic, scattered flight paths into a very specific, deliberate vow. The text tells us he reads the message. "I will love you forever," said Agnes to the prince, voicelessly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She is speaking the most dangerous, treasonous sentence possible right in front of the entire court, the ruling houses and the leeches, and nobody else knows.
They are hiding the absolute truth in plain sight through the medium of art.
On stage, amid this swirling vortex of moths and candlelight, Agnes reaches out her silver-clad arm, and Liuprand reaches back. They slowly touch fingertips.
To the audience, it's just a rich, lively painting, a beautiful piece of choreography. They don't guess at the devastating reality undergirding the pageant.
But one person has the context to crack the code.
Marozia. From her seat in the dark audience, Marozia pieces it together. She sees the undeniable electricity when their fingertips meet.
She sees the specific, devastating way they look at each other, a look Liuprand has never once given her.
The text says she sees that dreadful and wonderful thing that was love. And in that singular moment, years of confusing memories violently unspooled before her.
She suddenly understands every unexplained absence, every secret meeting, every stolen magical kiss that occurred while she was trapped in her bedchamber, driving herself half to madness and isolation, rotting from the inside out.
The physical reaction Marozia has to this realization is a masterclass in subtlety and devastation. She doesn't scream, she doesn't throw a goblet.
The realization manifests entirely within her deteriorating biology. She sheds a single tear, and then from picking nervously at her own fingernail, unwinding that tiny white band of flesh in her anxiety, a drop of precious blood falls.
That single bright drop of blood is the literal cost of the masquerade. It is the real, undeniable physical pain underlying Agnes's beautiful art.
In this specific moment, the drop of blood during the mask, is where we have to dive into the massive metatextual layer that Ava Reid includes at the end of the excerpts.
Reid introduces a fictional academic paper written by a Dr. Natalie Cleaver titled Humanism's Other Inheritance, the Brutal Intertextuality of Rocca Crudele.
It is a phenomenal addition because it completely reframes how we're supposed to interpret Agnes's actions. We absolutely need to spend some time on Dr. Cleaver's paper because it blew my mind. What exactly is Cleaver arguing about humanism and the mask?
Cleaver's thesis argues that we, as modern readers, are conditioned by the Renaissance and humanist ideals to view the individual's inner emotional truth like Agnes and Liuprand's love as paramount.
Humanism tells us that personal realization is divine.
But Cleaver points out that in the brutal, feudal, blood-based society of Drapain, imposing that humanist truth is inherently destructive. The mask is a metafictional tool.
Agnes uses a play, a fabricated piece of fiction, to violently break the reality of the castle.
She weaponizes art to force her internal truth into the open, completely disregarding the brutal structural consequences it will have for the community, and specifically for her cousin.
So Cleaver is essentially saying that Agnes's grand romantic gesture is an act of supreme humanist selfishness.
Precisely.
Agnes knows that demonstrating this love publicly will shatter the illusion of Marozia's marriage, threaten the political stability of the covenant, and potentially destroy the resurrection plot. But she does it anyway because her individual desire supersedes the collective stability.
She uses art to break reality. Cleaver's paper argues that Innamorata is a brutal critique of the Romantic era.
Agnes gets to dance with her beloved in the silver light. But the admission price for that beautiful moment is Marozia's absolute psychological and physical destruction.
The intertextuality of the mask, a play within a story, forces us to look at the mechanics of storytelling itself. We root for the lovers to declare their truth, but the text forces us to look at the blood dropping from the lawful wife's fingernail in the dark.
It leaves us grappling with the absolute wreckage of what love has done to this island. It hasn't saved a single soul. Think about the casualty list.
It's extensive.
Love has corrupted the principal doctor, Pliny. It has radicalized the servant, Ninian, into self-mutilation. It has physically tortured and humiliated the lawful wife, Marozia.
And it has turned the silent surviving statue girl into an architect of devastating public humiliation.
Which brings us to the core unresolvable tension of the entire narrative. Ava Reid's text demands that we hold two entirely contradictory truths in our minds at the exact same time.
The love between Agnes and Liuprand is genuinely beautiful. It is pure. It's profoundly transformative for them, bringing a statue to life and grounding a golden prince.
But it is, simultaneously and undeniably, a weapon of mass destruction for everyone else in their orbit.
Exactly.
So bringing this all back to you, the listener, why does this deeply dark, complex fantasy world matter to us in the real world? Why spend an hour dissecting the magical biology of Drapain?
It's a crucial question.
I think it's because Innamorata forces us to aggressively re-examine our own deeply ingrained cultural obsession with romance. We are constantly bombarded with stories, movies, and songs that view love as a purely healing, universally positive force.
Love conquers all. Love saves the day.
But Ava Reid asks us to seriously consider the sheer, terrifying weight of passion. She reminds us that the act of choosing one person inherently, structurally, means forsaking others.
To elevate one single person to the absolute center of your universe requires you to push everyone else out to the cold periphery.
It demands that we stop looking away from the collateral damage of a perfect love story. The text doesn't offer a clean resolution.
It doesn't shy away from the ugly, undeniable reality that Agnes's radiant joy is built directly, brick by brick, on top of Marozia's profound suffering.
If Liuprand hadn't been so pure, so rigid in his adherence to the biological laws of love, he might have been capable of showing his wife some small mercy.
His unyielding, beautiful devotion to one woman is exactly what makes him monstrous to another.
It's a haunting realization. We started this deep dive talking about the fairy tale expectation of purity, of the curse being broken by true love's kiss.
But down in the damp, blood-soaked stones of Castle Crudet, the light of the sunbeam didn't cure the rot. It didn't bring springtime to the cavern.
It just violently illuminated the agony of those who were trapped in the dark.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to consider long after we leave the morbid shores of Drapain.
Go ahead.
If the intense, beautiful, undeniable love between Agnes and Liuprand fundamentally requires the physical and psychological destruction of Marozia in order to exist, can true love ever actually be considered morally good? Or is romance, at its absolute core, simply humanity's most beautiful, most celebrated, and most socially acceptable form of profound selfishness?
Something to mull over the next time you hear a love song on the radio. Until next time, keep diving deep.